Hey, it's me, Maggie J. Today with a review of the movie Hocus Pocus. I can't read the rest of my script. October is nearly over, and I had so many more plans of doing spooky stuff this month, but so far, all I've accomplished is putting a new color scheme on my mic, digging through my Halloween box to find my most costume-looking costume. I really thought I had a lot more things to dress up in, but I don't. I have wrangled up a chair because these reviews are getting really long and I'm really lazy, so I need a little more support going on in the studio here. So I also brought my spooky pillow made by my friend Hope that my husband ordered for me just for the month of October so I could display it in my studio. This is my first video I've done. So with all that said, I will go ahead and relax so we can get into this review. Now, this movie is an old one that I have never seen, but a number of people that I know have an odd fascination with it, and I was curious if it is really that good that nearly 30 years later, it's still worth watching multiple times a year, as my sister does, or if this is more of a nostalgic jaunt that people just like to talk about more than they actually watch it. I know all about this because my favorite movie is The Goonies, and I could tell you about it all day, but I don't know if you've watched it lately. It's not as good as I remembered it being, but it makes me feel good when I watch it. Is this like that? Is Hocus Pocus my sister's The Goonies, and I'll just never understand that? We'll have to watch to find out, so here we go. Do I need to give a detailed explanation of what happens? I really don't know how to do this any other way, but I'll try to condense it down. So, we start off 300 years ago, just like Fear Street, which is another review that I'm working on, but that is taking a lot longer than expected. So, stay tuned for that much later on. Anyway, 300 years ago, a witch is flying around on a broomstick. She flies by this boy's window, and he wakes up with a jump and starts looking for his sister Emily. He steps outside of their house, and he can hear a woman singing. If you listen to the words, she's calling the children to go with her to a land of enchantment. A neighbor boy points to some pink smoke in the distance and tells the boy who just woke up, Thackeray, that the kids are heading that way. Thackeray tells the other boy to go get help and runs off after the children into the woods. He takes a little tumble through the forest, but eventually makes it to where the pink smoke is coming from, and it's a hut where 3 old women inside have managed to trap only Emily out of at least 4 or 5 kids that we saw approaching their house. Thackeray pokes around outside and is nearly spotted, then takes a ride up the water wheel and sneaks into the loft above where these witches are brewing up a potion. These women are Winifred, Mary, and Sarah Sanderson, and they are trying to brew up a potion to steal Emily's youth and restore their own youthful appearance. Winnie is the oldest, the bossiest, and the smartest of them all. Mary has a bit of a face thing going on and is very subservient and dumb a lot of the time. She does have her moments though. Sarah is the prettiest and thirstiest sister. Also a bit dim, but she is having a great time most of the time. So the sisters mix up all their ingredients, and just as they are going to give Emily a dose, Thackeray jumps down from the loft, pushes the cauldron into Sarah and Mary, and then pours out a bunch of the liquid onto them and the floor without burning his hands at all. And then he tries to save Emily, but is electrified or electrocuted or something by Winnie's magic. And as he is knocked out, the sisters inhale all of Emily's youth. Thackeray wakes up, but he can't move very well, so he can't escape. Winnie suggests they brew up another batch, but he calls them hags, so they decide to curse him instead. They turn him into a cat who will never die and has to live with the guilt of not saving his sister for all eternity. Just as they finish this spell, a mob has shown up at their house, banging on the doors and demanding to be let in to search for their children. The sisters hide the child by putting a blanket over her slumped over body, and then the witches yell out that they don't know anything about any children. In the next scene, they're strung up by nooses in front of their house, being asked about Thackeray, and they admit nothing. The sisters are able to cast one last spell that will allow them to be summoned by a virgin, so they can finish taking the lives of all the children in Salem. Then the barrels they are standing on are kicked out from beneath them, and for nearly 5 seconds in total, you see their feet just dangling there, which is pretty explicit for a kids movie. This is definitely some shit you couldn't get away with these days. And poor Thackeray. The townspeople want nothing to do with a black cat found at the witch's house, and his family never found out what happened to him. But some say that a black cat can be seen near the Sanderson house on Halloween, according to this teacher here in 1993. This whole intro has been a story being told, and I kind of like that transition. That was pretty cool. Not everyone buys into this old story though, namely this kid here, Max Dennison, new transplant to Salem from good old California, who knows Halloween is a holiday invented by candy companies. Luckily, Allison knows better and is quick to tell him it's actually based on All Hallows Eve. It's the one night of the year the dead can return to Earth, she says, and the class and the teacher respond like she's just given the right answer in Double Jeopardy, which is weird, but she's really pretty, so it's loud. Before class is over, Max walks over to her desk and gives her his number, which is just the first of several cringe things Max does. Outside of school, Max catches up to Allison and apologizes for embarrassing her, but she assures him he didn't. They talk a bit about him recently moving to town and not liking how much attention is being paid to Halloween. I can't tell if he genuinely doesn't like the holiday or is trying to be cool and not like anything. Either way, she is not liking that vibe, so she gives him a note. And it's the same piece of paper that he gave her with his number on it. He doesn't unfold it all the way though, and this is not the way that he handed it to her. So I'm wondering if there was something else on this note that we're not supposed to see yet. But I've watched the whole movie, it doesn't come back around. Max rides his bike home, and this is just the cutest little town with a shortcut through the cemetery where apparently these two doofuses like to hang out and shake people down. These guys are literally the worst part of this movie, and I hate them so hard. Also, I said that I've never watched this movie, but I remember seeing this scene. Once upon a time, I was flipping through the channels trying to decide whether to watch Nickelodeon or Disney back in that magical little window of time when Disney was part of basic cable and there were just those two channels to choose from. I remember a guy riding his bike through the cemetery and getting his shoes stolen by some fucking idiots. I can't remember if I knew that this scene came from this movie, and that's maybe why I never wanted to watch it, but whatever. This scene sucks. These characters suck, and I still hate it. Anyway, this is Jay and Ernie. Ice. And they want either cigarettes or cash, but since Max has neither, they'll take his shoes. So now bro's riding home in his socks and heads up to his room as soon as he walks through the door. He hops onto his bed and starts making out with his pillow, moaning about Allison. Then his sister Danny jumps out of the closet and scares him, and then teases him by flopping onto his bed and saying, "Kiss me, I'm Allison." What the hell, kid? Then she demands that he take her trick-or-treating since their mom is going out with their stepdad, but he is just not gonna do that. Then he climbs up these stairs and just sits there and pouts. What a big baby for someone who lives in a room with a drum set and a set of sweet spiral stairs that go up into the unknown. Some of us hated life and had to share a room, Max. God. Max does eventually agree to take Danny around the neighborhood, but refuses to dress up or have any amount of fun. While they're out, they run into Jay and Ice, who try to shake down Danny for some chocolate bars, but she'd probably kick their ass if they tried any harder. Besides, they see their new friend Hollywood and hassle him for no reason. Well, okay, there was no reason until Danny tried to interject on his behalf and just gives them more fodder to mess with him. He gives up his whole bag of candy, so they'll leave him alone. And at the next house, Danny tells him he should have fought them. At least he would have died like a man. This kid kills me. He tells her to get her candy and get out of his life. So she demands that they go home now. That's probably what he wants, honey. You should make him go out for 2 more hours. Anyway, they don't get very far before they sit down on some hay bales in someone's yard. Max is trying to apologize because he knows he overreacted toward her when he was actually mad at those bully boys. He tells her he hates it here. He misses his friends and he wants to go home. But then this punk proves she is actually the most mature kid ever and tells him, "This is your home now, so get used to it." Then she calls him a jerk face, which I don't know if this is where my family got this term or if it just organically became something that we use, but jerk face is an often used term of endearment amongst those in my bloodline, and a top-notch insult to those outside of it when I don't want to call someone a motherfucker, and I love it. I don't care how much screen time Max has, this girl is the star of the show. He would still be home pouting about his shoes if his sister wasn't being such a... I don't want to call her a brat because that comes and goes. She's mostly a catalyst. She moves the plot forward. He's merely reactionary, unless it has something to do with Allison. Well, to a point. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of the plot. The siblings make up and continue on trick-or-treating and stop in front of this rich people house and decide to ring the bell. Turns out, this is Allison's house. And there's a very posh party going on here with an enormous bowl of candy right by the door. The siblings attack the candy and are quickly interrupted by Allison herself standing at the top of the stairs, dressed in an old-fashioned dress. Allison is supposed to be handing out candy during her parents' party and offers these two some cider. Max is loving the opportunity to spend some time with Allison away from embarrassing school situations or bullies. He's just got this little sister to contend with, whose main mission is to embarrass Max in front of the girl he named his pillow after. And she gets some good jabs in on him. Max loves your yabos, she tells Allison, which is a term I was unfamiliar with. Yabos are either British teens with souped up cars or unfashionable Japanese douchebags, so boobs is a new definition for me. I gotta update my personal dictionary with this entry. The topic of the Sanderson sisters comes up, and Allison says her mother used to run the museum that used to be open in town. Max suggests that they go there so Allison can make a believer out of him, and she agrees. That's good thinking, Max. While she goes to change, Danny tells Max she doesn't want to go. He should take Allison on a real date instead. Which is a good point, but Max will not be deterred, and I kind of understand this motivation. You don't always get the opportunity to show a different side of yourself to someone that you like without them agreeing to give you more time. So you gotta strike while the iron is hot in these situations. You'll understand when you're older, Danny. By the way, I am the eldest sibling in our family unit, so I understand that younger siblings just have to go along with what we say. Those are the perks of being born first. Max keeps begging for Danny to go along with them, and eventually he agrees that next year they will go trick-or-treating as Peter and Wendy, and they'll both wear tights. That's quite a sacrifice, sir. And then they're off to the museum. This pumpkin thing was the epitome of Halloween for me when I was a kid. We didn't have any of the light up ones or anything like that, just 4 old regular orange pumpkins that we used for an eons, it felt like. I know once my mom busted those out of storage or wherever she was keeping them, it was spooky time. Time to plan costumes and figure out which rich part of town we were gonna go to. Oh, the memories. Anyway, this house is pretty well maintained for being so covered in cobwebs and such. Like, there's electricity here, but nobody has hired a monthly, if not quarterly, cleaning service in a place that was rather recently open to the public. Also, Max finds a modern lighter among the cobwebs and potion ingredients, so that's odd. Allison knows everything about this place, though, that the bones of hundreds of children were used to build the walls, and where the sisters slept, and how Winifred got her hands on their spell book, and the tale of the black flame candle. A placard beside the candle explains that if lit by a virgin on a full moon on a Halloween night, it will raise spirits from the dead. Luckily, Max found that lighter earlier, so now he can light this candle and really prove to all of them whether this is real or just tourism generating lore. Before that can happen, a black cat attacks Max's head. He shakes off the furry beast and quickly lights the candle, and immediately, some strange things are afoot. A weird wind picks up and blows all of the candles out. A yellow-green light shines from beneath the floorboards, and then all the candles relight themselves, and the three Sanderson sisters breeze back into their home as if they were simply out for dinner instead of dead for the last 300 years. And they are more than delighted to find a plump little child waiting for them inside. LOL, how malnourished must kids have been 300 years ago that Danny is plump? Anyway, Danny tries to act like she's one of them, calling them sisters and welcoming them home and laughing along with their jokes. She attempts to excuse herself from the house, but the sisters insist she stay for dinner. Then they try to throw her into the cauldron, but Max jumps up and yells at them to leave his sister alone. This scene feels vaguely familiar. The sisters argue whether they should roast him or let Sarah play with him. I'm not sure which fate would be worse, but Winifred quickly zaps him with her lightning powers to put a rest to any kind of debate. Allison attacks Mary, Danny attacks Winnie, the black cat Thackeray shows up, and in the chaos the girls are able to escape while Max subjects the sisters to the burning rain of death, and then he uses his lighter to set off the sprinkler system. That's good thinking, guy. The sisters try to escape the rain of death, and Max falls to the ground, unharmed, but that black cat jumps on him again and yells at him to grab the book. The sisters can only watch as Max runs away with their spell book because they're afraid of the rain of death, until they're left with no other options, and then they realize that the rain is merely water, so they rush off to chase after the book. However, once outside, they discover a black river running alongside their property that they're unsure if it's safe to cross. The sisters don't fear, though. They shove Sarah right into the stream so she can gauge the danger. However, it is a road, so Sarah is just fine. And the witches are able to use this black river to leave the area. They don't really make it too far, though. An emergency vehicle with lights and sirens rumbles by and sends them running back to their house. The kids and the cat regroup in the cemetery. The cat tells them about William Butcherson, Winifred's lover, who was caught messing around with Sarah, so Winnie poisoned him and sewed his mouth shut so he could never tell her secrets. This character becomes important later. Allison recognizes this cat as Thackeray Binks and now fully believes all of the stories are true. That emergency vehicle from a few minutes ago was actually a fire truck that we never get to see that had to check on the Sanderson house because the sprinkler system was activated. Winnie thinks that the firemen are witch hunters because they wear all black and they carry axes so that they can always prepare wood for a fire. Once the firefighters are gone, the witches go over their itinerary. They only have until sun up to get back their spell book and brew up another potion that'll keep them alive and young forever. Not all of the sisters can comprehend this plan, though, so good luck, Winnie. Meanwhile, at the cemetery, Binks has explained his life story to the kids and how he became a cat that could talk. Allison starts looking through the spellbook, but Binks warns her not to open it. Max has the great idea that they should burn the book, but it's protected by magic and won't catch on fire. Just then, the Sanderson sisters arrive on their broomsticks. Thirsty Sarah tries to tempt the Virgin, saying she'll be his friend, but Allison picks up a branch and shoos her away. Get away from my man, bitch. Winnie calls for the book, but Binks jumps onto it before it can fly away, and the kids grab it up and run away. I can't remember if they said this specifically, but it doesn't appear that the witches can touch consecrated ground or cemetery land because Thackeray tells them that they can't be attacked by the witches here in this spot. Winnie casts a spell that awakens that ex-lover of hers, William Butcherson, who crawls out of his grave like a zombie and doesn't seem too enthused to learn that he's dead or being forced to do the bidding of the Sanderson sisters. He does as he's told, though, and goes after the children. Max uses a tree branch to knock Billy's head off his shoulders, and then all three kids and Binks wind up falling into a crypt. Billy is ordered to follow them, and the sisters head back home to prepare for the return of their book. An encounter with a weirdly accommodating bus driver finds the sisters taking a ride to where there are children. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be concerned that this bus driver is willing to take these three weirdos in search of children, but I am. This is a trafficking setup. The crypt the kids fell into seems to be some kind of underground maze or tunnel system. Max pushes open a manhole cover and Binks jumps out, but there's a bus coming straight at them. Max lowers the lid, but poor Binks gets flattened by this bus being driven by Sarah, who is sitting on that creepy bus driver's lap. And then the driver says speed bump and they laugh their heads off. I cannot believe they included a cat getting run over scene and that they show the flattened body. I mean, of course the cat is okay. It's Thackeray, who's been cursed alive for 300 years, but holy shit! Mary tells them to stop the bus because she smells children. And the sisters wind up very confused about what is happening. Like, they can smell children, but they can't see children because they're in costumes. Luckily, the devil is here to help them out. Master, they yell and go to bow down in front of this guy who's just hamming it up on his front porch. He recognizes their costumes as the Sanderson sisters and plays along with the joke, saying he's not seen them in centuries. Come on in. A ways away, the kids run into a police officer and spill their guts about what's happened to them that night, starting with Max lighting the black flame candle, bringing the witches back to life, and them stealing their book. The cop gets off his motorcycle and tells them to scram and quit trying to play tricks on people putting their life on the line for this community. The kids run away and a woman walks up and asks, "What's the big deal?" "Some kids thought I was a real cop," he said, and then they laugh and ride away into the night. The scene continues. They run over a manhole cover right at the same time that Billy is trying to get out, and the lid chops off the tips of his fingers. Meanwhile, inside the devil's house, his wife is not happy to see these three crazy cosplayers in her house messing with her TV and dancing with her husband. She sicks her dog on them and the witches take off. Some children outside have stolen their brooms though, so they've got to walk home. Winnie has caught on to the trick though. The children are in disguise while they're being allowed to run amok on All Hallows Eve. The trio of kids arrive to the Halloween party that Max and Danny's parents went to. Max's dad finds him first, and Danny finds her mom on the dance floor. Danny spills all the beans in less than 20 seconds, basically telling her the same things that they told the cop, and her mom asks how much candy she's had. Max also tries to tell his dad what's happened, but nobody believes that the town legends are real. Not even when Max and Danny point out that the witches are here at the party. Max jumps on stage and interrupts the musical performer to announce the Sanderson sisters have returned and the town's children are in danger. Again, he points them out, but the crowd thinks it's all part of the show, especially when Winnie starts singing "I Put a Spell on You," that actually puts a spell on the crowd. While the witches dance on stage, the kids try to sneak away through the crowd, but Billy has arrived and chases them, who can't help but sing and dance and chant along with Winnie and the girls. The last line of the song is "Dance until you die," and now no one can stop dancing. The kids have escaped outside though, and are hiding behind a seafood restaurant. The witches come down this alleyway, but the smell of the scrod covers up the smell of the children, so the sisters head the other way. Allison opens the door to this oven and then tells Max she's got an idea. They head over to the high school, and eventually the witches also make their way there because it smells like children. Winnie believes this is a prison for children. Once inside, they find out it's a trap for them, set by Max, Allison, and Danny. Max taunts them over the PA system, and with the help of Binks, Allison and Danny trick the witches into going into the walk-in sculpture furnace, and they slam the door shut behind them. This is a really clever idea, as long as your high school has these kind of facilities. Good job, Allison. The trio cheers and celebrates on their way to Max and Danny's house. They're surprised that their parents aren't home yet when they get there, but they take themselves on up to bed anyway. Meanwhile, that green smoke that came out of the school's furnace flies back into the chimney and blasts the doors off of the furnace. The witches are back, baby. I wonder why fire didn't work on them, though. Witches head home on foot and run into Tweedledum and Tweedledummer, who insult the sisters and get themselves locked up inside some cages inside the Sanderson house. The sisters try to recreate the spell from memory, but Winnie can't remember it, so she puts out the call for her book to come home or make itself known. At Max's, the book opens its eye, and these two wake up and realize it's 5 a.m. Allison readies herself to leave, but Max mentions wanting to help out Binks, if they can, which gives them reason to look inside the book. As soon as it's opened, we can see magic swirling across its pages. Then it shines up into the sky like a beacon, leading Winnie to her precious book. Clever spell, chick. The sisters attempt to fly to the book, but their brooms were stolen, so they've got to make do with this old busted broom, a mop, and a vacuum. Binks wakes up while the teenagers are perusing the spell book and launches himself at the cover to close it, and then yells at them that nothing good can come from this. Max looks again for his parents, but they are still not home. He and Allison head downstairs. I'm not sure why we can hear crickets so loudly in this scene, but someone has cut through one of the window screens outside, so an attack is imminent. Allison says that she'd feel safer walking home if they had some salt, so Max rummages around the kitchen a little bit and finds one big can of salt. Then they have a sweet little moment and get the chance to kiss, but it's cut short by a sound from upstairs. They race up there looking for Danny and find the Sanderson sisters, who've come to reclaim their book and steal the little sister and the cat. Winnie sends Max for a little trip over the drum set, and Allison starts throwing salt all over so that the sisters can't touch her or Max. But they just blast their way out of the side of the house and speed on home with the sister and the cat. Sarah sings her song along the way, luring all of the children in town towards the Sanderson house. Allison tells Max they've only got to delay the sisters until the sun rises. They've only been resurrected for one night. The sisters are making their potion just as fast as they can, and Danny is talking shit and fighting back the whole time. Right before the witches are trying to force her into drinking some of their youth-stealing potion, Max busts in and distracts them with some facts that these witches don't know. It's daylight savings time, which means the sunrise isn't coming up, it's already happened. The sisters are suddenly struck by sunlight coming in through the windows, and then they scream and slowly sink to the floor. Max saves his sister and the cat, and has the opportunity to release the two idiots still trapped in the cages, but he just takes back his stolen shoes and heads on out the house. Good for you, Max! He's faced with a real Sophie's Choice here when Danny insists that they wait and watch the witches turn to dust. But Allison is outside pointing to a running car they could easily jump into and speed away. Allison wins though, and the siblings run to join her in the truck after taking the red tape off the headlights that they used to trick the witches into thinking that that was sunlight. I had to watch this scene a few times before I realized what exactly happened, because the daylight savings thing didn't make any sense at all. And I guess the Sanderson sisters are just really susceptible to suggestion. Whatever. Luckily, Max dumped over the cauldron and spilled nearly all of the potion, but the sisters are able to salvage enough to use on one child. Why don't they use it on one of these idiots? I don't know. They're the same age as Max and Allison, right? Teenagers are still children, right, Mary? Unless these two are actually adults and harassing children is just something that no one has kicked their ass for yet. Man, I hate these guys. Winnie insists that they use their only dose on Danny, so she tries to catch up to them on the road. She grabs a hold of Max twice while he's driving, but the second time he is able to elbow her and she veers into a tree. They continue driving to the cemetery, probably so they can be on protected ground, but Billy is here, and he is not held to those same rules. Winnie orders him to bring her Danny, even if he has to kill to make it happen. Billy wrestles a knife away from Max and uses it to cut open his lips that were sewn shut, and then he calls her a wench and a trollop and a whole slew of 300-year-old insults and refuses to do as she says. He's switched sides, you could say, and helps build Danny a safe space where the witches won't be able to touch her. The Sanderson sisters really do their best to try to get Danny, but in the end, Danny leaves the salt circle all on her own to help Billy retrieve his head that was knocked off by Winnie. The witch quickly snatches her up and reveals the potion and is about to make her drink it, but Binks climbs a whole damn tree so he can jump onto Winnie's arm and make her drop the bottle. Max catches the bottle, but instead of dumping it out and ruining the sisters' whole plan, he drinks it himself and dares them to take him instead. I don't know if that's a good idea or not. Like, yeah, you could easily be done with it, but then they've still got time to kill you and your sisters, yada yada. At least if you drink it, then they have to like chase you and waste their time trying to get you, and then they'll let your sister go. Okay, I'll allow it. Winnie swoops down and trades Danny for Max, telling him, "What a fool to trade your life for your sisters," which tells us that she would never do something like this, but she would expect her sisters to do that for her. That is not part of the elder sibling contract. Anyway, Winnie and Max tussle in the air, him trying to keep her far enough away from his face so she can't inhale his essence. Mary and Sarah are trying to get closer to Winnie so they don't miss out on their share of the youth, but Danny, Allison, and Billy are holding on to the vacuum cord, and Mary is hanging on to Sarah, and they're not getting anywhere. Allison and Danny suddenly let go of the cord and send the sisters flying. Winnie is knocked off her broom and falls to the ground, Max right beside her. She picks him up and attempts to inhale his youth, but is swiftly turned to stone by the sunlight. The other two sisters explode into confetti. The siblings are happy to see that they both survived, and Danny tells Max, "I love you, jerkface." Billy yawns and climbs back into his grave, and they find Binks dead beside the grave of his sister, the curse no longer sustaining him. There is a vision of Thackeray that thanks Danny for freeing him, and then his sister calls for him and they disappear together. Oh, it's so sweet. While the credits roll, we see the people who got cursed at the party are finally able to stop dancing and go home. Inside the Sanderson house, the two bullies are still locked up in their cages, and the book is there, looking around for a new owner, perhaps. And that is the end of the movie. That was kind of fun. I have watched this 3-ish times now, and I don't think that I would go out of my way to watch it again, but if it was on, I'd get into it. It's mostly a journey for siblings, like an example of how they should take care of each other and protect each other, and make sure that they don't get into anything too crazy on their own. Even if they're annoying little shits who take every opportunity to embarrass you and make you look like a fool. And I like that. That's an important lesson kids need to learn about their siblings. That's what they're there for, to be annoying, and to take care of, and to rely on, and to help them out when they need it. So I really like that about this. The portions that involve only the sisters are usually pretty funny. When Winnie tries to explain what's happening with her 300-year-old knowledge and logic, and the sisters are just being themselves and annoying the hell out of Winnie, who's trying to get bad guy shit done. When Winnie is putting the whole town under her spell by having a sing-along, I loved all that shit. If they ever do roll forward with a reboot of this movie, it should be made strictly for adults, include 2 more musical numbers, and a whole lot more of Sarah reacting to boys who are of a more appropriate age bracket for her. I think y'all really tricked her into sting after some minors here. There were a few instances that I thought were a bit too adult or a bit graphic for today's standards, but nothing that I think was like way over the line, except maybe the bus driver. That was certainly weird, even for that time. I think Bette Midler stole the show as Winifred. Her accent, her teeth, and that lipstick, her hand movements. This was a perfect performance. Overall, I give it 3.5 plus stars. This is not an instant classic for me, but I can understand why so many like this movie so much. The nostalgia factor is high, and it's fun. It's not something that you have to pay absolute attention to. You can tune in and out of during those scenes that seem to drag. And if you've got kids, you can make them think that you were watching it for them, and everybody wins. But it's a kids movie with 2 of the cringiest bullies I've ever seen on screen. And they run over a cat and show you its dead body. And the bus driver is out there still willing to drive strange women around searching for children that don't belong to them. The storyline is solid though. And the performances of the Sanderson sisters is something to behold. So I would say it is worth a watch. As a first-time adult viewer, it definitely dragged at some parts, but I mostly enjoyed it. As a second and third time adult viewer, I don't have much desire to put this on again. Not for my own entertainment, at least. Why? Alright, well, I guess you know what? We're still recording, ain't we? Alright, anyways, but that is all that I have to say about this. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing if you'd like to see more overly involved reviews like this. I usually focus on television shows, but October has really gotten away from me as far as time is concerned, and I wanted to put together at least one thing for Halloween. I will likely be doing a few more spooky themed videos because I've got several more outfits, and I only got to wear just the one, so subscribe if you want to see me in more onesies talking shit about some spooky TV shows. Until then, y'all stay safe out there.